In this video, I'll be covering Cyrene's kit and how she works with each Chrys's heir. As you can see, allied characters have a buff from a zone called Bloom Elysium of Afterlife. This zone provides a 20% true damage buff to your team and is activated with her technique. Now let's talk about her ultimate. She stacks recollection points and can activate her first ultimate when she has 24 of them. She can have a max of 27 of these points. Cyrene's basic attack gives her 1 point while dealing minor ice damage. There is almost never a case where you will use her unenhanced basic attack. Cyrene's skill activates her zone for 2 turns and she gains 3 recollection points. She also gains 1 point when a teammate or Memesprite takes action. This can only happen once per turn for each ally target. Additionally, just by being on your team, Cyrene increases the damage dealt by all allies by 20%. She will also start the battle with 2, 3, or 6 recollection points if 1, 2, or 3 other Chrys's heirs or remembrance characters are on the team. If Cyrene's speed is at least 180, it increases the team's damage by 20%. It also increases Cyrene and her Memesprite's Ice Raise Pen by 2% for each speed point above 180. This caps out at 60 excess speed, which means she can gain a total of 120%. Ice Aries Pen at 240 speed. Now back to her ultimate. Her first ultimate is unique, as it can only be used once per battle. When used, it dispels all CC debuffs, recharges everyone's ultimates, and consumes 12 points. It also summons her Memesprite and puts Cyrene into the ripples of past reverie state. In this state, her and her Memesprite's crit rate is increased by 50%, and her new ult cost is 12 points. Her basic attack also becomes enhanced, dealing much more AoE ice damage. During her ultimate, she can choose to either support an ally target or attack the enemy targets. If she attacks the enemy, Cyrene deals massive AoE ice damage, which you will see later. When supporting, she provides Chrys's heirs with a unique special effect, while other characters gain 40% damage bonus for 2 turns. Now let's go over each Chrys's heirs' special effect. Remembrance Trailblazer and Mem gain an attack buff based on Cyrene's max HP, as well as crit rate equal to 60% of Cyrene's crit rate lasting the entire battle. This special effect also allows Cyrene's Memesprite to use an extra AoE Ice Blast after using her enhanced basic attack. Overall, Remembrance Trailblazer and Mem's personal buffs help increase their damage output slightly. But the extra turn for Cyrene's Memesprite is substantial, as it can deal a lot of damage. Now let's move on to Aglaea. When the special effect is used on Aglaea, she gains Romantic, which maxes out her speed boost stacks immediately. After her, all her Memesprite attacks. Aglaea regenerates 70 energy and consumes Romantic. They also gain a 72% damage boost and ignore 36% of the enemy's defense, lasting until Aglaea's ult ends. Since this special effect is a one-time effect, you should try to use it once every Aglaea ultimate. You can see her regenerating 70 extra energy after attacking here. Overall, Aglaea's special effects help to solve 2 of her biggest problems at EO. The first was that her high-cost ultimate was difficult to get before her previous ult ended. And the second was that once her ult ended, she would lose all 6 of her stacks. This meant she had to waste turns dealing less damage to build the stacks back up again. Aglaea's special effect helps get her ult much faster. It doesn't fully fix her EOSO energy issues. However, even if she loses her ult state, using Cyrene's special effect on her will max out her stacks again, which fixes the second issue. Here is Cyrene's enhanced basic attack. She originally has 50.1% crit rate, but you can see in her stats she has 100% because of the 50% crit rate buff during her ult state. As you can see, her enhanced basic attack provided her 3 recollection points and did a small amount of damage. Here is her Memesprite's massive AoE attack that I mentioned would be shown later, as well as the extra turn from RMC's special effect. This attack, even being AoE, still did a significant amount of single target damage, and does much more than Cyrene's enhanced basic attack. Anyways, back to Aglaea. If you're wondering about Cyrene's pull value for EO Aglaea, I think it will be relatively high. She helps with some of Aglaea's biggest issues and deals a good amount of damage herself, if you choose to attack instead of support. For E1 Aglaea's, The extra energy isn't as impactful, but the special effect buffs still provide a significant damage boost to her by itself. Cyrene's biggest issue is how slow her recollection point generation is. Getting her initial ultimate can take a long time, sometimes taking a cycle or longer. However, I think Aglaea teams synergize very well with her, as Aglaea is usually played with high speed and takes a lot of turns. More turns equals more attacks, which equals faster ults for Cyrene. Also, Cyrene can hold the new Amphireus, the Eternal Land Planar Ornament set, which increases the entire team's speed by 8%. This helps Aglaea's already high speed increase by a significant amount more. This team is all EOS 1, except Aglaea, who is E1. This could have been a zero-cycle clear, but was not optimized for the sake of explanation. Now let's talk about Tribbie. Tribbie's special effect allows her to ignore 12% of the enemy's defense and trigger one additional instance of additional damage. This buff lasts the entire battle and gives Tribbie some more personal damage. Simple enough. While the damage isn't game-changing, it's more damage per cycle, which never hurts to have, especially on a support who already contributes a non-insignificant amount of damage for the team. Moving on to Mydei. When the special effect is given to Mydei, if he is not in the Vendetta state, he gets 100% action advanced. You can see his action bar move to the top here as he is not in his Vendetta state. 90% of the time, you should be in that state before your first Cyrene ult, so you won't really use the action advance. At this point in time, Mydei is entering his Vendetta state. When in this state, the special effect causes him to automatically use Godslayer Be God. This attack deals 60% more crit damage and doesn't consume any of his charge. When Cyrene uses her enhanced basic attack, she does significantly more than in the fight with Aglaea. Cyrene's damage shines in her OE combat and can act as a potent sub-DPS with the right build and supports. Here we can see when Mydei receives his special effect, he immediately uses his strongest attack. Mydei was able to deal over 2.6 million damage with a fully E0 team. Mydei, but more broadly, HP scaling characters have very good synergy with Cyrene, since Cyrene is also HP scaling herself. When the DPS is too, characters like Tribbie and Hyacine are able to support the entire team. This leads to greater full team synergy, which results in higher team damage output. Overall, I think if you are a Mydei enjoyer, Cyrene is a valuable investment for his team, especially if you have Tribbie. She won't only increase Mydei's damage like Sunday would, but would buff Tribbie as well, since she isn't limited to just one special effect. I would rate Cyrene's core value for both Tribbie and Mydei a 9 out of 10. Being HP scalers, they have good team synergy, but I feel like Tribbie has a very tame special effect. Mydei also synergizes well if he is built with high speed, but falls off due to the one-time use nature of his special effect. As you may have noticed, some characters' effects last the entire battle, while others only work once. Because of the amount of time it takes to get Cyrene's ult, one-time effects feel less valuable. Now let's look at what will probably be the best team in the game during version 3.7. Castorice, who is already one of the strongest DPSs in the game, is getting a major upgrade. But not only Castorice, but everyone in her new premium team as well. Let's start with Hyacine, as she was already previewed with the last team. When Hyacine receives her special effect from Cyrene's Memesprite, she regenerates 24 energy. You might be thinking, that's it? And the answer is yes and no. While that is all Hyacine receives from being supported, she has a unique mechanic. Unlike any other Chrysos heir, she can receive a special effect outside of being targeted by the Memesprite skill. When Cyrene's Memesprite uses any skill, which includes attacking or supporting any teammate, Hyacine gains 2 stacks of a buff called a Poem About Sky. When Hyacine uses a skill or ultimate, the healing recorded for Aika's skill is increased by 72%, and she consumes 1 stack of the buff. This might sound complicated, but it's very simple. Basically, Hyacine never needs to be selected by Cyrene, and Aika gains 2 buffed attacks every time Cyrene uses an ultimate. This is especially nice as it increases Hyacine Aika's damage output, while not needing to waste a Cyrene ult on her to do so. This means that when Cyrene gets her first ultimate, she can use it to support the other 2 characters and the entire team will be buffed. As you can see here, When Cyrene uses her ult, she supports Evernight, but both her and Hyacine receive a heart above their character, indicating their special effects. Hyacine now has 2 stacks of a poem about Sky, but after using her ultimate, it goes back down to 1. Overall, Hyacine has insane synergy with Cyrene by filling a Chrysos air swap on the team and dealing increased damage without any cost. I would give her pull value for Hyacine a 9/10. Next, we'll cover Castorice's special effect. When used on Castorice, her new bud can overflow up to 200%. You can see Castorice's new bud charge go above 100% here, when she has at least 100% new bud. After ulting, her Dragon's Explosion will have its damage multiplier increased by 0.24% for every 1% after 100%. Additionally, when there are 2 or less enemies, the damage multiplier increases by another 0.48%. That means Netherwing's final explosion can deal up to 72% more damage against 1 or 2 enemies, and up to 24% more against 3 or more enemies. All of her special effects last the entire battle and give her already high damage a massive boost. This also helps her in single target combat, which is usually more difficult for AoE characters. Overall, this leads to a pretty significant damage increase for Castorice, and makes her more viable in any game mode, giving me a pull value of 10/10. Finally, let's take a look at Evernight's special effect. When she receives her special effect, Evad's attack, Dream, Dissolving, as Do, increases its damage by 48%. Additionally, Evernight gains 1 more point of Memoria after using a skill or ultimate. Like Castorice, her special effect also lasts the entire battle. Overall, Evernight's special effect gives her Memosprite a nice damage boost. The Memoria generation, however, is quite insignificant as she doesn't take many turns and isn't usually played with very high speed. Despite this, because they are both HP scaling, I'd still give Cyrene's pull value for Evernight a 7/10. Now, I want to talk a little more about this premium team, and what makes it so good. The reason these characters' pull values were ranked so high were not only because of the value of their individual special effects, but also their role and increased total damage output, and how they increase Cyrene's personal value within this team. After her first ultimate, she can buff Castorice, then use her already available second ult to buff Evernight. This also gives Hyacine and Cyrene their own buffs. Since everyone's special effects basically last the entire battle, this means after her first 2 ultimates she doesn't need to support anymore. So instead of wasting ultimates continually buffing a single special effect character, everyone has full uptime on their buffs, which leaves Cyrene's ultimates free to do damage. This team helps to utilize the full potential of all the characters, which is what makes this team so strong. I do think a minor change to Castorice's special effect would be much better. If it was made to overflow, but keep the ult cost at 100%, Newbud, or allow her to keep charging Newbud even when Netherwing is summoned. It would help Castorice a lot by increasing her ult generation, providing more frequent Netherwing explosions. Regardless, if you have Castorice, Evernight, and Hyacine, I would rate Cyrene's pull value at 10/10. She increases the damage output of every character of that team through special effects while also providing true damage. Additionally, she is also being supported and buffed by every character on that team as well, increasing Cyrene's personal damage. This team also consists of 4 Remembrance characters, which lets her start with 6 Recollection points, and also provides the team with 7 characters that are able to provide Recollection points, which helps with Cyrene's biggest issue of having extremely slow ult generation. As you can see, this team synergizes insanely well with each other, making Cyrene a must-pull if you have these characters. Even without Evernight, Cyrene is still worth pulling using Remembrance Trailblazer as a substitute. Doing so would take away buffs from everyone but Castorice as well as the damage Evernight provides. But it would also give Cyrene's Memosprite extra turns, leading to more damage for her. This leads to an overall slight team damage decrease but still makes pulling Cyrene worth it. However, if you don't have Hyacine, Cyrene's pull value drops significantly as there's no replacement that even comes close. You'd be losing the HP buff from Hyacine's ult, Ika's personal damage, and a significant amount of healing, which results in less frequent ults for Castorice. Anyways, that was a long yap fest, so let's look at more characters. We'll cover Cipher next. Cipher's special effect is relatively simple and lasts the entire battle once she receives it. It increases her damage dealt by 36% and reduces the defense of the enemy characters. This defense reduction is 20% for the enemy marked as the patron and 12% for the others. She doesn't work with many Chrysos heirs, so I would give her a pull value of 5/10. For Anaxa's special effect, you get a skill point, and his action is advanced by 100%. As you can see, his next turn move up here. It also increases his skill DMG by 40%, attack by 60%, and the number of his skills hits by 3. This is another one-time effect, and will occur for 1 turn every time Cipher's ult is used on him. I would rate Cyrene's pull value for Anaxa as 7/10. She provides the occasional skill point and action advance while increasing his overall damage output. This is pretty much the same thing Sunday does for him, just less frequently with more potent buffs. Additionally, Anaxas aren't usually played hyperspeed, which makes point generation difficult. In this video, I was using a 160 speed Anaxa on Eagle of Twilight line 4-piece to make him work. However, he does have synergy with Cipher, Cerydra, and DHPT, which helps with that issue. Overall, if you have either Cipher or Cerydra, Cyrene might be worth pulling for a decent, but not overwhelming increase in Anaxa's damage. If you don't have them, I wouldn't recommend pulling her just for Anaxa, and would stick to using him with Berta, Sunday, and or Robin instead. The next character we'll be looking at is someone who will be relevant to every player. If you haven't guessed it already, that character is Dan Heng Pamansa Terai, or DHPT for short. I should start this segment by saying, I lied. Earlier, I mentioned that there was a unique quality that only Hyacine had. Turns out, DHPT also has this unique mechanic. When Cyrene's Memosprite uses any skill, DHPT's bondmate gains a 16% damage increase for 2 turns. Also, the next 3 Soldragon attacks will deal more damage equal to 80% of the bondmate's shield. You can see the enhancements applied to DHPT, as well as the 16% damage increase given to Hysilens since she is the bondmate. When Cyrene's Memosprite specifically targets DHPT with her skill, his Soldragon attacks immediately without consuming an ult charge. This attack also increases the multiplier of the shields provided by Soldragon by 150%. Here, you can see his Soldragon advancing up to the top of the action order. However, you will never want to do this unless you are in need of immediate shields or minor damage. So what is Cyrene's pull value for DHPT? It's similar to Hyacine in the way where Cyrene doesn't have to waste ultimate supporting him. However, it's much worse. DHPT is an attack scaling character who wants to support other attack scaling characters and needs a crit DPS bondmate to deal any meaningful damage. Because Cyrene is HP scaling, this already creates anti-synergy within team comps and diminishes the potential of her personal damage. Because of this and his minor bondmate buff, I'd rate Cyrene's pull value for him of 5/10. Now let's talk about Hysilens. When she receives her special effect, her damage dealt is increased by 100%, and deals more dot damage when using her basic attack or skill. This effect lasts the entire battle, but she also has a one-time effect as well. As you can see here, when she ults, her energy jumps up significantly. Every time she is given the special effect, her next attack will regenerate 60 energy for her. So after she was given the special effect, Hysilens used her ultimate, which generated an extra 70 energy for her, which is what you saw happening. In terms of pull value, Cyrene is definitely pretty low for Hysilens. Hysilens relies heavily on Kafka or Black Swan to work, which restricts the amount of Chrysos heirs you can have on the team. Not to mention that all dot characters have been attack scaling so far. On top of that, you will constantly have to use Cyrene's support on Hysilens to keep feeding her energy for more frequent ults. This means that Cyrene will deal almost no personal damage. Fortunately, it looks like dot damage taken during enemies' turns will deal true damage, unlike with Tribbie's E1. Overall, Cyrene is a great buff to Hysilens' dot damage, but doesn't do much for the rest of the team. If you already have Kafka and Black Swan, I wouldn't recommend pulling her just for Hysilens, so 5/10 pull value. Now onto the final team, and the one a lot of people seem to have high hopes for. We'll be covering Cyrene's role in Phainon's premium team with Cerydra. Starting with Cerydra, when she gains her special effect, the military merit character has its crit damage increased by 30%. As you can see here, before Cyrene's first ult, Phainon's crit damage is almost 270%. However, after providing Cerydra with her special effect, Phainon's crit damage increases to nearly 300%. Additionally, after Coup de Main is triggered, Cerydra immediately gains one extra charge, which will be shown later. These effects last the entire battle and are relatively insignificant. It provides a minor amount of crit damage to your DPS while making Cerydra's point generation slightly faster. Overall, her special effect is weak compared to others, so I'd rate Cyrene's pool value for her at 2/10. Time to talk about Phainon. His special effect lasts the entire battle and increases his crit rate by 16% during his ult state. It also makes Caslana lose 15% of his current HP at the start of each turn and deals additional damage 5 times to one random enemy after attacking. Each instance of additional damage deals fire DMG, equal to 30% of Caslana's ATK. You just saw that his crit rate was about 84%. And here, you will see that after ulting, Phainon's crit rate was increased to over 100%. Finally, the last part of his special effect allows him to refresh all of Caslana's extra turns. What this means is that after ulting, Phainon will have his original 7 turns then explode. But instead of going back to normal, he will stay in his ult state and gain 7 additional turns. After these refreshed turns, his explosion will then return him back to his original state. You will see this occur later in this battle. So how good are his special effects really? Let's start by comparing Cyrene's contributions to Sunday, who is the character she'd be replacing in his premium team. In this table, you can see what each character uniquely provides to the team, and how it compares. Sunday provides more crit value for Phainon, while Cyrene provides more damage percent. Cyrene also gives 20% true damage, and gives Phainon a turn refresh, while Sunday provides skill points and more shields. You might think the turn refresh is a huge Cyrene selling point, but this is only relevant during combat that would require multiple Phainon ults. If you finish the battle before Phainon's first ult would end anyways, the extra turns never get used. Even during longer combat, this effect gets more value but is still overshadowed. This is where we will have to address Cyrene's most glaring weakness. Cyrene has such slow recollection point generation that it makes any advantage in buffs. She may have over Sunday almost insignificant in comparison. With Sunday, Phainon is able to get his ult within 1 or 2 team rotations, which is relatively quick. With Cyrene, it can take almost an entire cycle to get her first ult, even with a full team of Chrysos heirs. There's no action advance on Cyrene's team, so you're relying on the character's speeds to generate points. And since it takes longer to get Cyrene's ult than Phainon's, he charges his ult first. Then you waste turn after turn waiting for Cyrene's ult, which will charge his already full ult. By doing so, you waste Phainon ult stacks, action value, damage, and much more. Cyrene gains more value the longer the battle is prolonged, but that's not beneficial for current endgame content. Modes like the new Anomaly Arbitration, whose stars rely on clearing quickly within 2 cycles, don't benefit from doing more damage later. And the extra damage Cyrene might provide isn't enough to make up for the time lost in the early cycles within the cycles you have left. Teams with Sunday instead of Cerydra are even worse because you start with less recollection points. It's also not beneficial to action advance Cyrene with Sunday and generate stacks that way because of her speed. Cyrene wants at least 180 speed, and ideally 200 plus, which means it's difficult to have a Sunday with -1 or even something close to that speed. With sustainless teams, you usually replace DHPT for Sunday, resulting in the same issue as earlier. The only difference is that you lack sustain, and will most likely get wiped out in more difficult content. Overall, the absolute anti-synergy within Phainon Cyrene teams is insane for characters who are lore childhood friends. I'd say that his current premium team is actually better than teams with her for most content so far. It's disappointing, but my pull rating of Cyrene for Phainon is a 2/10 because of it. Now that we've covered all the Chrysos heirs, I want to give my final thoughts on Cyrene so far. First, I want you all to remember that this is just V1, and many things are subject to change. That being said, my pool value ratings in this video show Cyrene's compatibility with each Chrysos heir, and their best teams. They're not strict pool values, as many things can change until their release. I also want you to remember that everything in this video are my own opinions and observations and are, in no way 100% fact. To sum this up, Cyrene provides many strong buffs from her base kit, making her a strong support no matter who you have. But in terms of the special effects she provides, some Chrysos' heirs are better than others. She synergizes well with extremely fast and HP scaling Chrysos' heirs. I hope this was helpful in understanding how Cyrene works, and let me know if you would like to see specific team comp showcases.